Okay, it is Second Look Wednesday. Welcome to the latest edition of the Daily Gooner here on YouTube and on all the other uh, podcast feeds where you find us. The usual cohorts here. I'm Raphael, joining you from the United States. Joining me from London, our now regular trio. Let's welcome back Jacob Weeks. That seat's pretty comfortable for you. Welcome back, Jacob.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Below me on the grid is Sam. Welcome back, Sam.
Hello, mate. Hope everything's well.
Everything is much better, certainly, than it was last week at this time. And of course, rounding out the team, Ryan. Welcome back, Ryan.
Hello, mate. I'm excited to be back with some good news.
All right. Yes, as we said at the beginning, as I said at the opening, it is Second Look Wednesday. On Saturday, very glum, very depressed, very disheartened Arsenal fan base. The club had looked flat and was flattened by Brentford in the season opener 2-0. A lot of the same problems led to a lot of the same scapegoats being sought out by angry fan base. You know, Arteta, Edu, KSC. You know, it seemed the line, there was no movement. There was nothing to look forward to on or off the pitch. But things have really changed, certainly in the last 24 hours. And today, announcements of two incomings, two players we've waited for a long time. Sam, I'm going to begin with you. The first one, probably the longest one in unfolding, Martin Odegaard is back. He was here on loan last year from Real Madrid, went back to Real, looked like Carlo Ancelotti was going to keep him, and then it looked like they might loan him. They wanted to loan him, and we wanted to sign him, and then it looked like he was going to go back. And now finally, the little puppy's found a forever home. He's found it in London, Caldy.
Yeah, absolutely delighted by this signing because I put out on Twitter last night, there's literally no downside to this player. He is somebody that incited the whole upturn in form in the second half of last season. That's including the time that he had injured as well. So he's a player that will make us go up the pitch. He's one that will initiate the press. He'll get the best out of Smith Rowe. He'll get the best out of Pepe, Aubameyang. He's one that will flourish even further in the Premier League because, as you say, he's coming to his permanent home, and I believe the announcement video will just be an extension onto his loan move video. So, you know, he's got a permanent home. He'll flourish. Every season that we've got him for, he'll just go from strength to strength. I know people will potentially look at this signing and go, Arsenal's got no ambition, rubbish. Arsenal's got plenty of ambition with him in that side, and getting him in, it's just shiny syndrome for people wanting Maddison. But ultimately, for me, Odegaard was the one, and he's here.
All right, Jacob, let's talk about, excitement. We're all excited. I think, Mikel Arteta's excited. This is a player he wanted to keep. He never wanted to go. Obviously, the player's excited. He's been bounced around since his days at Sociedad 2 years ago, where it looked like he was stable, and then Real jerked him back. They ended his loan, his 2-year loan, early, and then they sat him on the bench for half a season, and he finally found a place. But, aside from all of them, I'd have to think Nico Pepe's got to be just ecstatic right now, because those two, as the season wore down, were building a really good partnership on the right side. And if we looked at some of the problems coming out of Brentford, it seemed Arsenal was very left-sided, and this is the perfect complement. He seems the perfect complement to Smith Rowe on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I spoke about it in the debate show as well, but Odegaard tends to move more to the right-hand side of the pitch, as shown on his heat maps. And that really helps just unlock both sides of the picture, as it brings, because you've got someone like Smith Rowe on the left creating things down there, as well as Tierney. And then on the right, you've got Odegaard can pull the strings, bring Pepe in, whether that's with a pass, with an overlap, so that Pepe can underlap. And it also, by having that extra creativity on the right-hand side, issues with right back are well documented. That we haven't got someone who's going up and overlapping and really attacking. The fact that Odegaard drifts out to that side also limits those issues. So not only is he adding to our attack in his own ways, he's actually helping take the burden off some of our limitations.
Ryan, I'm going to build on what Jacob was just saying. We talked about how he helps going forward, but one of the really pleasant surprises of his game when he first joined the club was how committed he was to the press and how he tracked back and helped, take the ball, get the ball away, or he would come back and help the defenders get the ball and bring the attack forward. He kept us from getting stagnant. They doesn't have to work from keeping him from just kind of running himself into the ground. I mean, I imagine he's just dying to get out on the pitch and run again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think if you've got three behind the striker with Saka, Smith Rowe and Odegaard, you're literally suffocating the opposition because all three of them have really high ball recoveries, pressing stats. Because obviously we just got Wisecout, and I was looking at the pressures from them three, and we will literally suffocate the opposition into giving the ball away to our strikers, and then literally won't have to create many chances for them. But yeah, I can't wait for Odegaard to finally be announced as a permanent deal so I can spend some more money on a new shirt.
Okay, Sam, I'm going to let you wrap up this segment. I mean, because there's so much to say. I don't want to just blast through it. Obviously, we're excited. He's finally here. It's a permanent deal. It's not a loan with obligation. It's not a loan with option. It's done. So what else could we look for? We've talked about his defensive prowess. We've talked about his, he seems like boundless in energy. We talked about Pepe. I think back to that wonderful cross he threw to Martinelli late in the match where he was brought on. And even with his injury problems, he seemed pretty durable. The problem seemed to be with the national team kind of overworking him, not his manager. I think Arteta knows how to use them. But what else can we look forward to? What does he add that this club is so that lacks right now? And there are many things that they lack right now.
Somebody that will progress the ball no matter what, because ultimately we've looked in pre-season and also against Brentford, we were slow on the ball. We didn't move the ball forward as quickly as what we should do. There was passes on, especially in the Brentford game, where we could have done a quick ball forward and been in at goal. So he'll bring that to us. Also, you've got to think about the opposition. They'll drop a bit deeper now, considering that he's coming in and they know about his passing range and how good he is with precise passing. So if they drop off, that gives a bit more space between the defence and midfield. Also, he knits this team together. He really does knit this team together. Wherever he is on that pitch, he literally links in with either the central midfielder, the winger, the left or right back, the striker, and it's always quick little 1-2s to open up a bit of space and then move off with the ball. So ultimately, we are getting one hell of a player, and people underrate him. I don't know how, but I just believe that with him having a permanent home, he'll go from strength to strength, and people will be saying, well, my opinion was a bit silly in the summer. He's brilliant.
Jacob, let's stay with Sam's point that he is underrated. I think part of that was because people like to play the shopping game and the value game. And, James Madison, let's talk about this, was for many people, and according to many sources, the top attacking midfielder target for this club. And Leicester was asking for something between 60 to 70 million, if you believe the reports. Arsenal are getting Martin Odegaard for less than half of that. I mean, it seems like 35 million euros, somewhere around 29.75 million pounds up front. That could grow, with add-ons, that could go up another 5 million. But still, to get a player, an attacker of his quality for under 35 million, I don't think we can underestimate that. I mean, that's exactly what you want this club to do, is it not?
Absolutely. I think the only reason people are complaining about him or underrating him is they've tarnished him with the brush that he was in the team last season and we had a poor season. However, he was so obviously only there for half a season, and that second half of the season was considerably better. Wasn't enough to dig us out of the hole that we got ourselves into in the first half. But if you look at that second half alone, when we brought in Odegaard, the upturn in form was ridiculous. He played such a key role in changing the tide of the team, so it'd be completely unfair to tarnish him with that brush of, oh, we finished where we did. As Sam said, he's going to join everyone together, and the fact that we've got him for such a great price is really good business from the club. Like, it's a hard position to fill, and to do it for that cheap, you got to hold your hands up and say, well done.
All right, and that could create a domino effect. I mean, we're thinking that's 35 million that could have been earmarked or used for James Maddison now can be applied somewhere else for a right back, for a striker. Ryan, I want to hold off on that for a little bit because I want to ask one more question that's come up while these gentlemen are kicking around Martin Odegaard, and I'm just so excited about this, as we all are. I don't want to just blast past this, but what does he do for Emile Smith-Rowe? I mean, we saw Smith-Rowe really kind of running his lungs off in the opening match, and he was one of the few players who really kind of seemed plugged in tune. I would think that this is just an opportunity for him to advance. We talked about Pepe, but what about his partner in the advanced midfield?
Yeah, I think he's going to help Smith-Rowe by allowing him to play more on the left. Because me and Sam, we talk about this all the time. I don't think Smith-Rowe is a central attacking midfielder. I think he's a wide playmaker, where he can drop deep to pick the ball up off the left back. He can come inside and let Tierney overlap, or he can run in behind. And I think what showed for me against Brentford was Smith-Rowe wasn't central enough. He wasn't in between the lines enough. He had little times where he was there, and when he was there was when we started creating chances to score. He had that chance where he run through pretty much the whole team. But with him, I think he prefers the wide spaces, whereas Odegaard can drift in and out of those two, the wide right and the central area, whereas Smith-Rowe, I think, likes receiving the ball on a half turn wider, where it's a little bit more 1v1 instead of 4v1. So he's going to make Smith-Rowe really pop this season, I think. I don't think it's a coincidence that Smith-Rowe and Saka and Pepe played a lot more better towards the end of the season when Odegaard was there, because for me, I said it before, Odegaard gives me prime Ozil vibes. Just the aura of him, where he,
good Ozil, the early Ozil, right?
Yeah, he just knits everything together. What he does isn't seen, is the best analogy I could give. You don't see what he does until someone points it out to you. Like the pre-assists, he'll give a pass to someone else who sets the goal up, and you're like, you don't see it until I just told you, kind of thing. And I think that's what Odegaard does for us.
And again, as you talk about it, another question pops up. So I'm going to give something to Sam. I mean, we've all kind of been wringing our hands, Sam, in the preseason matches, looking at the strikers and saying, what's wrong with the strikers? You know, is Aubameyang done? Is he lost a gear? You know, or they seem invisible. But one point that comes up again and again, this is before Odegaard came in, was that Arsenal don't create chances for him. And if you look at Aubameyang from 2 seasons prior, when he was, you know, among the Golden Boot finalists and, you know, winning the Golden Boot, and what happened to him last year, part of it was COVID and the family problems, but also, you know, as you said, until Odegaard arrived, his service was really disappearing. And Arsenal has been pointed out in places like The Athletic is among the lower tier, the lower quartile in midfields and attacks that create chances for their strikers. We haven't talked about this, but maybe this the tonic that a guy like Pierre Aubameyang's been hoping for.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I definitely think that this is something that Aubameyang needs, because as Ryan said earlier, with the three that's potentially behind him, and you could probably say four, including Pepe as well, is that they'll win the ball higher up the pitch. So you're through on goal. You haven't got that big distance to make the box and to try and score. So essentially, if you're winning the ball, say around the 20-yard mark, you're through on goal or one-on-one with a defender. So essentially, this will give Aubameyang a lot more in that final third. I think also it stops us being one-dimensional by always going down the left-hand side with Tierney, because that's just doesn't suit anybody's game in this Arsenal front line. Because essentially you're looking at defenders, they're what, 6'2", 6'3", the majority of them, and you look at our guys, they're what, 5'10" ish. It just
Ish.
it just don't work. So essentially, with this, it brings more dimensions to the Arsenal attacking front line, and it's much needed.
All right, and building on that, I mean, as soon as we're all basking in the glow of Odegaard is back. Earlier today, Jacob, other word that Aaron Ramsdale, as he's coming. It's done, by my understanding. Club had targeted him. Then it seemed off. It seemed Sheffield was asking for too much money, but I heard reports today that he was at the club facilities getting medicals. Another need, because we look at the Brentford game again. Don't want to bash Bert Leno, but he looked unsure of himself, and something that's he's another one of the whipping boys when things go bad, and he didn't give the knee jerkers any reason to calm down after that match. He looked kind of stuck in the box, indecisive in the box. What does this do? I mean, obviously it makes us excited as another option, but what does this do for the club? How does it change the club, in your opinion?
Well, it's certainly an interesting one. Obviously, Leno appears to need competition. He needs to be kept on his toes. The last time we really were raving about Leno was before his injury, when Martinez then had to come in. Last season, he wasn't awful, but he was not at the levels that we would expect. And over pre-season and the Brentford game, he's just starting to really look shaky. He's always had issues potentially suiting Arteta's system with the playing out from the back. We know that. But even his kind of commanding aspects that's always been good, the shot stopping or the kind of moving players around the box, even they're starting to look a little bit shaky. So hopefully having some competition coming behind him is really going to push him on. If not, we've got an experienced Premier League keeper there to step up now. We don't have to worry about very inexperienced Icelandic keeper coming in.
No, we're not even going to mention his name.
Admittedly, Ramsdale was one that took me a bit of time to get my head around. He didn't necessarily stand out for me at Sheffield United, but then I don't think anyone stood out at Sheffield United last year. But the more I've watched, and particularly from his time before Sheffield United, there's certainly cause for optimism.
All right, Ryan, let's take that. Going back to the time when Leno and Martinez were here, when Leno got injured and we're all in a panic. One of the things that Martinez showed immediately, and I know you and Sam were talking about this a lot, was how good he was on the ball, distributing the ball with the ball at his feet. This goes back to Unai Emery coming in and trying to change kind of the way that he wants to build out from the back. He wants to be very deliberate, move his fullbacks or center backs out wide and have everything on the ground. That really didn't suit Leno's game coming back, and he seems to struggle. We talked about the issues of the bad passes to Xhaka, the mistakes that led to immediate goals costing the club points. This keeper is a different flavor, right? He really seems to kind of fit that approach, which Arteta's building on Emery wants to do himself.
Yeah, I think the stigma around Aaron Ramsdale not being able to play out is because of the way Sheffield United play. Because they don't play out, all they do is look long for their strikers or their midfielders or whatever. So he doesn't really, the stats don't back up his ability in that regard. But I went back today and I looked at England under 21 records, his stats for them in the European Championships, which happened not so long ago. And he had a 91% pass accuracy and completed 383 passes. I can't remember, I think it was against Switzerland. So he can do it. And one of the big aspects of him playing out the back is his long diagonal passes, which, if you remember, Emi Martinez was exceptional at, which got us out a lot of press, high presses, which I've watched Leno, and he either makes the wrong decision by giving it to Xhaka in the middle of the pitch, being pressed by 4 players, or he tries to play the diagonal ball out and it goes out of play because he doesn't have that level of distribution of a Martinez or a Ramsdale. And I do think once Arsenal have a goalkeeper that can play out from the back, that's where our problems will start diminishing, because we'll be more confident in the defence, so they push up higher. The midfield will be more confident, they push up higher, and then we're up the higher of the pitch. Our number 10 is actually in the number 10 position, and we're closer to goal, creating more chances, solely because of how our goalkeeper plays out.
All right. Now, this is another piece, Sam, and we can look at this as Arteta's been rebuilding the entire roster. We know this had come from the time he came in December of 2019. He started at the back, and his priority number one was to kind of stop the bleeding. Under Emery, they were giving up too many shots. They were giving up too many goals. They were terrible. They invited the counterattack. It seemed they were kind of toothless in stopping it. And where he started, with the formation change, but once he could start playing with his rosters, he went to the center backs. He brought in Gabriel, then he brought in Pablo Mari, and then Tierney was healthy again, and he was able to incorporate him. Now we've seen Ben White brought in, obviously Thomas Partey in front to protect them, but this is a project that has been built from the back forward. We all focus on strikers and attacking mids and everything else. So Ramsdale seems kind of like almost the completion of this, but we know, and we saw this in the Brentford game, right back is still a mess. And it would seem that even with all of these great additions, especially these 2 today, that's still, we can talk, they need a striker, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But right back, I think if he wants to finish the job and really give himself the best fighting chance this season to get the club back up, challenging for European positions, doesn't Arsenal have to really still push to fill that position in?
Yeah, I believe so. But the difficulty is we've got 4 players that potentially can play in that position. Out of the 4, the one that I think I would feel most comfortable with is Ainsley Maitland-Niles, but he's got his heart set on being a central midfielder, which to me is a bit baffling because, I'm not being funny, he's got England caps as a wing back or as a full back. So to be wanting to be a central midfielder, going to West Brom didn't really set the house on fire. So you'd think you'd have a bit of a reevaluation over the summer. But ultimately, if we can shift 2, 3 of them, then if we're looking at right backs, I'd be going straight to Norwich and say, sorry, I know you've just come up, but here's a hefty bag, and we'll take Aaron's off you. Because I'm not being funny, he would complete this backline for me because he's defensively sound. 1-on-1, he knows when to step in and win the ball, and he engages higher than what our fullbacks do, because we just retreat, and how many mistakes does that lead to penalties or dangerous free kicks in and around the box? Moving forward, it'll be quite similar to Tierney as well. He's very able to pick out somebody when crossing the ball in. So for me, it makes a lot of sense to go and get him. But also just touching on Ramsdale, again, we can push our fullbacks up high and allow our wingers to come in if he's going to do big diagonal balls. And for me, get them two in. That's the back line for me completed. And look, just watching the West Brom and Sheffield United game, it sure looks like Sheffield United are missing Ramsdale because they're losing 4-0.
Ooh, ooh. Jacob, staying with right back. And it seems, there's, how people twist these things, but late in the match, Arsenal's behind. They're trying to get some kind of spark, trying to get a goal. They take Callum Chambers out, which didn't have the best game at right back. And a lot of eyebrows were raised because Mikel Arteta brought in Tavares, who's a left back, and he had three other right backs sitting on the bench, and he overlooked them. Kind of cynical chatter that this was a signal to the front office, like, hey, I don't have a right back. I need a right back, and I don't have one available, even though I have three in name. Is there anybody else aside from, or you can kick that about if you want to, but is there anybody aside from Max Aarons, who Sam has brought up, who floats your boat? I mean, I'm seeing the name of Emerson Royal from Barcelona. I know Barca's in some financial distress right now. Then there are potentially some bargains to be had out there. Or should you think that he should keep with the plan? I mean, we think about it: Ben White, Ramsdale, English internationals, homegrown. It almost makes too much sense, at least for me, looking at it, that go to Norwich and bring another one in.
Yeah, I will say the bringing on Tavares, I think, was a twofold thing. So it was kind of, obviously, he spent all of last season rotating three right backs and couldn't decide on any of them. It's also, we needed to get someone up the pitch. Tavares is an attacking fullback, whether that's on the left or the right. So I think it was also a tactical decision just to get someone up the pitch. However, that also stems back again going, I don't have an attacking right back. I need an attacking right back. So it still comes back to he didn't trust them, but I don't think it was just a point. I think it was a tactical decision as well in that aspect. But yeah, Emerson Royal, yeah, I would be very happy with him. From what I've seen of him, he looks a very competent right back going forward. Decent enough on the recovery. Obviously got a bit of pace to him. But I've got to agree with Sam. Max Aarons is my number one target without a shadow of a doubt. He's already proved it in the Prem. He's then gone back down to the Championship, which is a tough league to play in, and got more experience under his belt. He's come back up. He looked good the other day. I just think, yeah, increase the homegrown quota. He is going to be pricey, but I think the value he adds will just be even more to this team.
All right. We've got to do it. I'd like to go through the entire pod, Ryan, and not talk about the Brentford match, but it happened. It was hard to sit through. It's terrible to sit through. But I mean, there were some good things that came out of that. I mean, but before we jump into, who stood out, let's talk about, all the hubbub about the club looked flat. The strikers were not available. Abba was not there. Lacazette was not available. Balogun had to play. It was down on Balogun, which is a terrible burden to put on a youngster really making his first a proper Prem start in a match that really counted in the standings. Didn't happen for him. The imbalance, we talked about that. But, everybody wanted to jump on it. This club isn't ready. Look at the manager. Comes out within 48 hours that there was a COVID scare, that the club actually kind of petitioned the Prem to cancel the match or postpone the match. How much weight should we put on that performance? And then given that, what was your takeaway? I mean, we've got to look at the good, what little, how spotty it was in that match.
I just want to say, I called it on the pod last time. I said it would go how it went. You'd lose the midfield battle and would be dominated aerially, and it happened. I just guess Arteta's not watching our podcast, unfortunately. Otherwise, he would have listened to me. But I think if there was a COVID scare, which looks likely, you just have to go back to our training pictures. You don't see Xhaka, you don't see Tierney. I don't think you saw Pepe either. So were they not training beforehand? So half the team may not have been training. So it kind of made sense a little bit if there was a COVID scare. Obviously, you're left without your two experienced strikers, which I don't think would have made a difference at all. Just to put out there, I still think we would have lost with either of them up front. But Balogun looked good. Balogun looked really good. From what he had going for him in that game, he looked really good. I was pleased with what he tried doing and how he got into the game, running in behind, which you don't see from our current number 9. So I was pleased with him. I was pleased with Smith Rowe. Obviously, Tierney was probably our best player alongside Smith Rowe. And yeah, so not many positives.
Just leave it there. All right. Let's move. Sam, we talked about right back and the need for that. It seems that if there's going to be another one in, and let me just take a pause here, let all of you who are following and all of you who would listen to us later on know that we are planning another deadline day show here. And we have some great guests lined up from Football London, from CBS, other places. Gentlemen who have been on this pod on the past are going to join us in that day. And we're hoping for some late activity. Right back to the priority, though, I think everybody is looking. I've seen it in the chat. I've seen it on social media. Everybody's also got their eyes turned to striker. Even with Balogun showing promise, this is too much pressure to put on him. Obviously, it seems they want to move Eddie Nketiah. Do you think, let's begin with this. How likely is it that the club brings in a striker or tries to bring in a striker late? And who might you look to as a target?
Well,
they try. Let's start with that.
Striker's a bit of a difficult one because obviously we're quite stacked of where we are right now in terms of Lacazette, Aubameyang, Balogun, Eddie. So that's 4 strikers for essentially one spot, one bench spot, and so you're leaving 2 out every week. So if we can get rid of Eddie, Laka, maybe loan Balogun, but for me, I'd like to keep him in and around the squad, because if you do get rid of Eddie and Laka, then if injury hits or another COVID crisis hits, you're stuck for third striker. I know people will point to Martinelli, but for me, he just doesn't do it for me as a number 9. So for me, if we can get rid of them 2, I think that the club will be looking to bring a striker in. I think, as we've said many a time on the pod, we're looking more of a target man type striker. See some rumblings of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. He'd be ideal for the way that we're playing at the moment. Venkos was a option probably about mid-March, so might revisit that, but a lot of that depends on what's going on at Wolfsburg. I just think that it'll be a surprise signing and an exciting one, but who it would be, I'm not sure. Okay.
All right. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what evolves. As you said, nothing is going to happen. We can go back to the missed opportunity with Tammy Abraham. That seemed contingent on moving Eddie Nketiah out at least, or maybe Lacazette. Neither one of them was moved, obviously. So right now, Tammy Abraham is in Roma. So it's got to, as you said, 4 numbers. Somebody's got to go out before one comes in. They do have the option, if they want to, of loaning Balogun. Jacob, let's turn our attention to the matches upcoming. They're going to play Chelsea. Things don't get easier. Everyone was so cynical, and rightly so, after the Brentford match. Like, no change in the roster, toothless, bloodless, loss, and now we're going to face the defending champion City, and in between the European champion Chelsea. What hope is there? And obviously, we're seeing now that Lacazette and Aubameyang should be available for this match. But let's keep in mind also that the last time these two clubs played, Arsenal won. It seemed very similar circumstances. Kind of Chelsea had bought all those players the previous window, £300 million, and it paid off for them. But you look at their roster, you look at ours, at their starters, they're just so much deeper. And now they're, they've gone out and reinforced even more. But again, three at the back seemed to be what worked for Arteta in that match. He seemed to kind of neutralize and keep the game close to the vest. Are you looking for a similar approach this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. It will depend partly on whether the two new signings are registered in time to play, which is looking likely at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see who we see, whether they come straight in. But I would imagine we're going to go to five at the back. At the end of the day, they've got Lukaku coming back in as well. Part of their issue, Chelsea's issue, was last year they couldn't score enough chances, despite creating a lot. So it's and he's going to give a physical battle, something that Tony really won last time out. He really beat our defenders physically. So I think we will see a five at the back system, and I would imagine we might see holding, which I know some people will be disappointed about. But in that sort of battle, I think he's probably the best option we've got, especially after seeing Mari struggle. And we know White in the air on the physical battle, that's not his strengths. He's a good defender on the recovery and playing out from the back. But I think we've got to prepare for that physical aspect this time.
Okay, and Ryan, picking up from that, I think, Arteta's going to go back to what's worked, and it has worked. He's had a pretty good record in his time as manager against Chelsea. He's had a pretty good record against the better clubs, City notwithstanding. We kind of have to put them off to the side, and we'll talk about them next week. But against United, against Chelsea, he's done a respectable job. Who goes around if he's going to play three center backs and drop his, and say two wing backs? Who fills out the midfield? Who gives them a chance to some balance, some breakout potential when they're absorbing Chelsea's attack?
The four across the middle so it's a 3-4-3, I'm guessing, and then the four in the middle. I'd right wing back. I'd actually go Ainsley Maitland-Niles. So I think he's the best suited for that position. Central midfield, I think it speaks for itself. I think it has to be Sambi and Xhaka. Sambi Lokonga is one of the best signings we've made in a long time. So underrated. Watching him against Brentford, he was taking the ball on the back foot every single time. Left wing back is a sticky one for me, because do you go the more attacking with Saka, or do you go with a little bit of extra defensive with Tierney, or even use Tavares and Tierney at left centre back? For me, I'm going Tierney at left centre back with Tavares at left wing back, and then up front I'll go in Saka, Martinelli, Smith Rowe. That is if Lacazette or Aubameyang isn't available.
You're going to have Martinelli as the front in the center.
I think his press and his energy will cause that back three a lot of issues, especially when they've got going towards their own goal.
Okay, and that kind of pressure, Sam, really worked last time. I mean, Arsenal poached a goal from that, forced it was an own goal. It kind of bounced off the post, and Smith Rowe tapped it in. But again, that's worked against Liverpool. I mean, this formation Arteta seems to have it in his back pocket, and when he's playing, one of the more imposing clubs in attack, that seems to be his default, and it seems to work. So what changes would you make for what Ryan suggested? How would you line him up?
Do you know what? I would actually play just revert back to 4-2-3-1 because we've got to think we've played them in pre-season. I'd say first half we matched them quite well, although that did have Partey in the middle. But if there's a slight chance that he's potentially back, then I'd put him straight back in. And you think with that game, we only conceded 2 goals to 2 mistakes, and that's a brain dead bit of defending from Rob Holding and Bellerin that can't pass 3 yards. So for me, I would pretty much have our usual lineup and have it as a 4-2-3-1.
Okay. And how would you line up 4-2-3-1? I mean, obviously, midfield we know Xhaka, Lukonga. Who's your back? Who's your back four?
I would probably go with Tavares on the right.
Stick with what he did last week. In other words.
Yep, I'd have Holding, and Ben White as the 2 options in the middle, and Tierney on the left.
Okay. And who's going to be your striker in that formation? Who's your single striker? Given the issues that we don't know if Lacazette and Aubameyang are going to be available, would you go back to Bellerin? Would you give him a second chance as the start?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Because although he's got a lot of good movement, I think that will cause them a bit of trouble. But he's got that physical presence as well, and he can mix it in both aspects. Whereas I recognise what Ryan's saying with Martinelli's press. I think that coming from the left-hand side will cause them more problems because he'll be able to potentially cheat on the wing back.
So, who do you play at number 10, Smith Rowe or Odegaard?
Odegaard.
So you drop Smith Rowe completely?
I'd bring him on second half.
Oh, so it anticipated my question to Jacob. It's like how much? Well, you can answer this, Jacob. How much do you think we'll see from Odegaard this weekend? Off the bench, or he's going to go in straight away?
I think that's going to very much depend on the formation Arteta goes with. If we are playing with the system that we used last week, I think he starts. He already knows the system. He might not have trained much with the team so far this time round, but he knows what Arteta wants. He knows the system. He knows the players in that attack. There's no risk dropping him in. But if we are going with a 5 at the back, I think we're much more likely to see him come off the bench. So I think it's going to be system dependent.
Okay. All right. We're kind of taking this a little farther. Let's get our predictions, and then we'll talk about. Let's go back to the market. We'll end with the market. But Ryan, everybody's so dour. Friday night, Saturday morning, Monday morning. Is there hope for a point? Can Arsenal get a result here? I mean, could they even win? I mean, it seemed the last 2 times they played Chelsea, they've defeated them.
I just think that the energy that the signing of Odegaard permanently is going to bring to the squad is going to be like, we've got that extra. We just signed Real Madrid youngster, superstar. Do you know what I mean? It's that excitement in the squad, and I think we could win. I think we can get a result, especially if Arteta does revert back to his counter-attacking style. Because we've seen the last 3 times we've played them, we've beaten them 3 times with the same style. So I think we could win 2-1, 3-1.
Some home cooking wouldn't hurt either, would it, Sam?
No. Unfortunately, I think it'll either be a 1-1 draw or we'll get tanked 3-0.
I'm going to be optimistic here. I was going to say 1-1, but I'm a little wary of Lukaku, given how Tony really kind of battered our back line. I think that's something to watch. I hope there's improvement there, but Lukaku is just a whole other class of like striker beast altogether right now. So fingers crossed. Jacob, you get the final crack at a prediction. What do you say?
I am a bit more pessimistic. I think it probably will end in a 2-1 loss, but it's not out of the realms of possibility if everything clicks. We certainly have got the capability in the first 11 to compete. But yeah, I think what you just said is right. It's going to depend on that physical battle, Lukaku.
Okay, all right, and let's go back to the market. Let's end. Everybody's buzzing today. Two incomings, two players who look like they really could help the club. Game us through. Again, we've still got another week after this. Is it time now, Ryan, to move some deadwood out? They have a lot of players that need to go out, and just give me a prediction, and we'll revisit this. Right back in, striker in, both or neither. But let's start with the outgoings first.
I think right now Arsenal are biding their time. I think they want permanent solutions for the deadwood. The likes of Bellerin, Eddie Nketiah, Lucas Torreira.
Right, there's so many.
Lucas Torreira, who hasn't even come back to pre-season training yet, who's supposed to be back last week, but I think they're waiting to see if they get any panic offers from teams in the last week, and I genuinely believe they're sat on some cheap offers, whether that's a loan or permanent. I think they're sat on them waiting to see if they do get the offers they do want. But if they don't, they will just loan them out so we get the squad space. We free up the wages on the wage bill. I can see 2 right backs leaving. I can see 2 strikers leaving. And hopefully we pull it off.
Okay, then I guess that means we're going to be sweating deadline day again. We always do. 1 addition, 2 additions, no additions. What do you think?
I'm going to say 1.
Right back or striker?
I think it'd be striker.
Well, okay. Sam, same slate of questions for you. Obviously, they're going to move some players out. But I guess the more important is incomings. Will they bring in any 1 or 2, in your opinion?
I want to go optimistic and go 2 coming in.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to be here to take people through deadline day, and hopefully there'll be the pot is boiling. We got the Thomas Partey edition on deadline day last year, so bookmark us, earmark us. We're going to be here all deadline day again. Jacob, you get the final word. Incomings, how do you see them? 1, 2, none.
I think there's definitely going to be 1, and I would lean towards a striker in that. However, if we pull everything out and get the sales going, I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 on deadline day either.
Okay, I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. I think there's going to be 1. I think it's going to be a right back, simply because I think to finish Arteta's rebuild or finish that phase of it, that's the more important. Obviously, we'd love to have a striker, but the options are kind of limited. You're going to have to pay a lot of cash. I don't know that there are going to be that many players available at the deadline, and obviously there are going to be a lot of big potential buys available next summer window as well. So I think right back is the higher priority for me. And I think that's where, if Arsenal is going to splash cash, that's where it's going to be. But, come back for the deadline day show and we'll all see all those questions answered together. We want to thank all of you, here on YouTube, all of you who follow us, the pod, and all the other places for joining us here. Keep up with us on Twitter. We'll give you updates on the deadline day show, who our guests are going to be. Things are always changing. Things are in flux, but we do have an exciting lineup, and we'll tell you more as deadline day draws closer. All right. But on this happy evening, again, 2 signings, for Jacob, for Sam, for Ryan, I'm Raphael. We submit you good night and good news for Arsenal Football Club.